So, I'm going to talk about how to use Flexbox to create or recreate the page that you can see in the Figma design file right now. So, I will only do the first part of it, the part that the user sees on the screen immediately, and I will skip the rest of the page because it's quite large. And I'm going to use VS Code and Figma extension for VS Code. And everything will be built with Flexbox. That's the main focus. The first thing that I'm looking for when looking at this page, I want to know what are similar parts that are used in different places, because that defines what classes I need to create and how can I style my page to write less code. So I can see there are buttons in the navigation bar that are similar to buttons below. So I will create separate class for them. I will not create a selector per button, but I would make it generic. Then another thing, if you look at the entire page, you can notice that the width of content is actually restricted at some point. So if you scroll down, you will also notice this pattern. So it's restricted at about 1280 pixels. That's the maximum width that I will also use. And for our content, the restriction is the same. It's just the content inside of it. It's even less wide, so we could apply a different setting, a more specific setting there as well. So that's what I'm going to do. I will start, and I will start with just index.html file and styles.css file. So I will add a placeholder, and I want to link the styles file, and that's done. Now let's start with the header. In the header, stop part, so I use header semantic element first. Then I know that on the left side, I will have a logo. On the right side, I will have navigation bar. For logo, I will use an image, and I know that it's a link element, so let's just try anchor tag, and there will be image inside of it. It's important to use anchor tag because a logo on any web page should lead the user to the home page. So that's the purpose of using a link there. And let's just leave it blank and maybe add a class logo if we need that. And I will, for the logo, I know that it's in the image format, so I will copy it as SVG. In this case, so it's quite big. Let's create assets folder and logo.svg file. That's where I will place this code. And I will remove it from here and import it as image element. Let's say live coach Reiki. Live. So that's the logo element, and we can adjust it when we need. Now we want to create a nav element and also the closing tag, of course. And inside nav element, nav is semantic element used for navigation. We use unordered list to structure the menu. That's a common pattern that you have to use. And at this point, I actually want to open Figma in VS Code, so it's a little bit easier for me to work. So I go to plugins. I have this plugin installed already, and I know what the project I need, so I selected it. At first, if you use it for the first time, you would have to log in into it, of course, and select the project. All right, so here it is, and we have this menu item, so the a little bit different. I need to go to the correct page. So designs is the page that I should be using. And I will zoom in, and we can see that it's read, listen, talk, transform, and then two more list items called No Reiki and Consult with Reiki. Um, so those are list items that we need. All right, I know this unordered list will be a nav menu, so I will add a class nav underscore underscore links. That's a BAM convention that is used here. And for every list item, I will add, let's actually see if we need that, but I know that for last anchor tags, I for sure need a class, so I will add it there. And I will use class btn on the no button, no Reiki button. For the other button, I will use btn and btn field classes. So now we can look at the styles file and just so you see how index.html look. It doesn't look like in the example right now. So we are going to fix this. And let's start like with basic style that we always need to add. First, select all elements with universal selector and set box size into border box so that you can know for sure the size of any element. Different elements, they have different box sizing. I only want them to have content, padding, and border included in the total width or height. So that's why I'm setting it. And I recommend you to keep it as a general rule and always add it to your page. So then we go to the body element and we will set margin to 0 because body element has margin by default. Then I want to send a font family and I want to use Railway font for this assignment. And I want to use Railway font for this assignment. And I also need some other fonts. So if we look at Figma file that we had, you would see that we are using Avenir. I couldn't find it on Google Fonts. And we are also using Frances font. So I'm going to download Frances. And instead of Avenir, I will be using Railway font. So those are two fonts that I need, and I will get embed code, and I'm using link. It's preferable approach over import, a bit faster. So copy these tags and first add them into the head section of the web page. And I always like to put CSS file underneath it. And all right, now we can start using it. So font family, I'm using Railway and Sans Serif as a fallback. And for the color, let's see what our Figma file has, because it may not be black, it's almost black. So that's the default color that I'm going to use for the text. And right, let's keep it like this for now. We could normally set font size here, but since it's not the entire page, I will actually skip it for now. And if we need it later, we can add it again. Then there are other things that I want to reset. It's anchor tag element, so I want to remove default styles, text decoration none, and I will use color inherit. So whatever parent element color is, we will use that. And afterwards, if we need to change it, of course, we can change it. For the hover state, whenever user hovers over the element, I also will remove text decoration and I will style buttons in a better way. I also want to remove default styles from the unordered list element, and I will do that by setting list style type to none and padding to 0. So right now our styles should look a little bit better, still not there yet. So first I can notice that the image looks broken. Let's see what's wrong with it. The folder that I used is assets, so the path is not correct. I use relative path, specify assets folder, and then select the actual image element. Now it works better. And then for the nav element or unordered list element inside of nav, I will add additional styles. So I will select the class and set displayed flex, justify content. I'm not 100% sure about that, so let's remove the styles first and see what we actually need. So display flex will make our nav links element a flex container, and then all list items will automatically be placed next to each other on the same line because default direction is row for the flex container. That looks better. Let's see what we have as a gap between those elements. So 48 pixels between every item, except for those two buttons. So since the distance between these last two buttons is different, I will wrap them in additional div element. And for the rest, I will say that gap is, oh, of course, forgot it, it's 48 pixels. And now that looks better. For the div element, I will add another class saying nav buttons. Let's do that. And for nav buttons, I will also use display flex, and I believe the gap is a bit smaller. It's 16 pixels. So that's what I'm going to use. This looks better, but still menu doesn't work as we would expect. So what do? We have this header element. I will go ahead and select it. We only have one header. That's why I'm not adding a specific class to it. And I will set display to flex. And for justify content, since the direction is row right now, justify content will align content horizontally. I will be using space between, so I want to push logo and navbar to opposite sides. All right, now they are very close to the edge. That's not what we want. What we want is to find the total width of these elements. And for that, I need to select both of them. And let me try. I can see that this element so I can see it's 1336 pixels. It looks like this. So there are different approaches that you could do. You could add margin. I prefer to add max width to the header element. and max width would be this value, 1336 pixels. And also, since the header now takes less space than is available, it's placed on the left side. We don't want it. We want to center it. So I center it by saying margin 0 and auto. The auto part centers element on the page. All right, looks better. And also, if we inspect the header, we can see its height. We could either add padding inside of header, or we could have used height. Either would work. I will actually go with padding in this case. So 24 pixels 0 because we restricted max width. So let's see, that looks better, I think. So now let's move to the next step. I want to add some background color to this page, the one that was used in Figma. So I will go and add it to the body element. So it's applied to entire page. Nice, looks better. I also want to change appearance of the text a little bit, so I will inspect it first. And if we look at this read text, we can see it's 18 pixels, then the text below that looks like paragraph is 20 pixels. Those are different sizes. I will then set the text or font size for the header element, and I will do like this, font size 18 pixels, and it is also, let's see, 28 pixels line height. Looks a little bit better again. So let's continue. Now I think we can move on to the buttons. And if you look at the BTN class, there is a bunch of styles that we can add. So I will instead inspect it in Figma. Here I can see padding being set as, let's see, 10 and 18 pixels. It is probably true. 10 and 28 here, so a bit more. And for the other button too. All right, sometimes it change, but I will assume that it's 10 and 18 everywhere. We could override it, of course, if you want to. So let's start with it. Padding, 10 pixels, 18 pixels. Then the button has border, 1 pixel, solid, and the color. I'm not using variables for today, so I'm just using the color code. And if we inspect it, all right, we need the border radius, and we can copy it from Figma directly. Then we also need font size. I know it's 18 pixels, I believe. It is actually 16, which is a bit strange, but well, let's use what we have. And let's copy it from Figma then. Font style normal, it's normal by default, so I'm not using that. And let's leave everything else. So that's it. Now I will add a hover state. So whenever someone hovers over the button, I will add the opposite color of the background and the text. So it's visually understandable. Then for the button field, I will do something a bit different. So let's keep the border, but we will only need background color, which will be this code, and color, which will be the opposite color, right? For the inverted state, for the hover, we will do it the other way. So just use background. So we will use this color code for background, the white one, and the dark one for the color of the button, color of the text. Well, that looks better. Now it looks like we are done with the nav bar. So that's initial part. And I will now add the main element. Main element is a semantic element. Again, it will hold the main section of the page. Then I will add a section, and the rest of the content will be placed inside the section. If we go to the section, what I see when I hover over it, I can see two elements, like two divs inside our section. I can also see that our section has margin of 96 pixels on the top, and 96 it's also on the bottom. If only I could select it properly. I struggling to select that exact element, but trust me, it's 96 pixels on top and the bottom. So I will start with that. And I want to actually add one more class to the section. So I will start with classes. First one, to make it reusable for the rest of the page, I will do like this, max width, and then the width of the page, and I know that it's 1280 pixels, the value where we need to restrict the width of our content. And I also know that I want to add, I want to center it, so I will add mx auto class that I will also create in a bit. And I also know that I want to add margin on the top and the bottom, so I will create my96 class, margin vertical 96, margin horizontal auto. All right, so let's start with this classes. The first one is this one, so it's just max width and 1280 pixels. I will not add anything more here to make it as reusable as possible. Then I will create mx auto class, and I will add margin left and margin right set to auto there. And I will also create my96 class and their margin top and margin bottom. So now we cannot really tell the difference, but if inspect the element, it should look like there is some content because of the margin. You can see this orange space, otherwise the height of the element is 0 right now. Right, so let's look at the page. I can see two sections here, one or two boxes here, the first one with text content and the other one with the image. So I'm going ahead and creating two div elements inside of the section. And between these two elements, I saw a gap. So to add this gap, we can create another class for margin. So I prefer to use margin in this case. You can, of course, make section a flex container with direction column and add a gap. It's an alternative approach. But just to make it a little bit shorter here, I will use margin bottom. This div elements, they are block level elements, so they would be stuck in a column by default. That's what I'm relying on. And I will create m bottom, so MB 46 class, and add margin bottom 46. And I will only add it to the top div. And after that, I will put this beige element. So for the beige, I will use span with class beige, and text is, where's text? Free webinar. Then we have this heading text. I will copy paste it as text. Oh, that's unexpected. And also we have a paragraph element underneath. And let's try to copy paste as text as well. And after we have another box actually. So I will add it directly, but you can see two buttons, they are placed together, so they kind of grouped, and in Figma you can actually see the box around them. Actions, so that's what I'm going to use. And inside of it, I will just add two links with learn more text. And the other one, let's copy from Figma in VS Code. It's a little bit easier. Register. So for buttons, I will make them look good, easy and fast. So I will just apply class btn to one of them, the first one. And for the other one, it's btn and btn field, just like we used in the menu. And if you look at the page, buttons look good already. But of course, we need to center them. So we are going to start centering the content right now. And I can see that free webinar is the first element. So that's what we are going to look at. And sometimes you can see styles in Figma. They look valid, but not all of them are needed actually. So I will copy and modify. All right, we have a badge element. Span element has a display property set to inline by default. Since H1, the next element, has a display block, span is on its own line, or it looks like this, but it actually does not behave as we need. So I will start with the display property, and I will set it to inline block. And after that, I will copy styles from Figma. So let's use this color text. And I don't think that we need text align center. Let's try without it. Font family will be railway set for the body element. Font size is correct. Font style, I will avoid it. And line height is something that I also want to use. Let's see, and we also need background color, and background color in this case is this one. I also know that we have border radius 16 pixels, and let's see, we have padding as well. Now it looks closer to reality. It's not centered, so that's something that I would also like to do. And I will also add a class for that. So to the section element, say text center, another utility class, and I will add it above. So whenever we want to center text, we'll use this class. Right, looks much nicer. Then let's move to the H1 element. I will assume that this would be the main heading and we would use it across the project. So I use element selector directly. And I know that the height of the heading it should be 72 pixels, and line height is 82 pixels. So I will copy this styles and remove unnecessary ones. First, color, text align setter. I'm removing that because H1 potentially can be not centered. Font family, let's see, I believe, okay, it's needed here, but I usually prefer to set font family by selecting all headings, because I know that on this page there will be H2, H3 and other elements that would also use this font family. So I would instead select all those headings first and assign font to them separately. But let's keep it like this for now. And let's leave everything else copied from Figma. I think it looks valid. And this looks better. Let's move to the paragraph element. So for the paragraph, I will take a look at what we have, copy it from Figma, and only keep the color code. Remove text align center for the same reason. Remove font family because we are using font family from the body selector. Font size is right. Font style not needed. Font weight is a bit different, so let's keep it. And line height is 30 pixels, so that's also right. Let's keep it like this. And for the last part, we have this div element. I will call it class btn group. Let's accept that, and I will add it somewhere closer to other button classes and apply display flex. What I actually want to do is to add some space between these buttons. It's 12 pixels here, so that's what I'm going to use as a gap. And for this class, I will also add MX Auto. I think that should help. It did not, because I believe, all right, our div element is taking entire space, so MX Auto didn't, it actually worked, but our content is now adjusted using Flex because I applied display Flex. So we need to fix it on the Flex level, so justify content center, that's what we need. And all right, this looks better. Another thing that I'm going to do is to adjust spacing, and I'm noticing that there is margin around H1 element, the standard margin that I forgot to remove. So let's remove that, margin 0, and the same is for the paragraph element. If you inspect it, you will spot margin as well. That's not what we need. So let's reset it. Right, and then we also have our own margin values. So between page and heading, it's 16 pixels. Between large heading and the text below, it's 24 pixels. And between the text and buttons, it's 48 pixels. So I'm going to create these classes MB16, and that will be margin bottom 16 pixels. Then we have MB24, and that will be margin bottom 24, and then we have MB 48, if I recall correctly, and that's it. So MB16, I will apply it to span element. MB24 will be applied to H1 element, and MB48 is for the paragraph element. Right, this looks better. And now the last part that we have left is the div element with an image. So for the image element, I will just go to Figma and inspect the image first. You can see that there is a container, and container has width of 1216, so it's basically 1080 pixels minus 32 plus 32 pixels on the side. So still our max width 1080 class applies here, but we need to add some padding on the sides. That's what I'm going to do. And inside of it, we will have an image. So I copy it as SVG, and I'm going to add it to assets file, say hero SVG, and save the file. Then I will just add image element with relative path. So here image, and let's say abstract image as alternative text. And for the div element, I'm going to create a class saying hero image container. And what I'm going to do is to add padding of 0 and 32 pixels. So on the left and right, 32 pixels, 0 on the top and bottom. And for the image inside of it, I will select it like this and set width to 100, height to auto, so that on smaller screens, the image doesn't look too large. Nice. So the goal here wasn't to make this page responsive, but by relying on certain default behavior of different elements using max width instead of widths, we made this page very close to being responsive. And that works with minimal amount of code. You can, of course, use different approaches, but this is what I would prefer this time. And I prefer using this small reusable utility classes that you can just throw in whenever possible. And I think it makes your development a lot easier and faster. Thank you.